Well, hello everybody, it's Paul here, and we're going to have a look, as usual, at the night sky in the month coming up, and we've got a whole range of highlights here. We'll first of all have our customary look at the Sun, and we've had some aurora activity, Jupiter and Saturn, Mars, Venus, Neptune, Uranus, and some serious observing. We have actually had people seen Pluto. Then we've got the Orionid meteor shower, zodiacal light, and some open clusters in Auriga and Gemini, and Orion's getting earlier, so we can see that, and the Hyades M45, and finishing off the month with a so-called blue moon. We'll explain what that's all about later. Now, it is the time of year when the societies would normally be getting together for their lecture seasons and so on, and the observing nights. And, of course, the trouble with the COVID-19 pandemic that's still going on and will probably be with us for quite a while longer is that that's rendered a lot of this impossible. But people are finding other ways to do things. Now, my own society, the Irish Astronomical Association, irishastro.org, we're doing Zoom lectures. We've done one, and we've got one penciled in for October already. That's on October the 7th, Wednesday, October the 7th. That's well worth looking at. Also, our sister society down in Dublin, the Irish Astronomical Society, that's irishastrosoc.org. They've had a Zoom lecture as well, and others are doing similar things. Some people are doing socially distanced observing, and that's mostly coordinated through the IFAS forum website. That's irishastronomy.org, and that's well worth having a look at to see what's going on there. So despite all the doom and gloom, things are going on in the astronomical world, and it's worth keeping in touch. Okay, so we're going to start off with a customary look at the Sun, and actually nothing much has changed on the Sun. There have been a couple of small sunspots. They are cycle 25 sunspots, so we definitely are well underway now into cycle 25, but really we're still 71% of days this year so far have had no sunspots. Now that was only 68 last time, so actually things have got a little worse, but I suppose that's just a natural variation. That will, as we see what happened 11 years ago, that went from 71 down to 14 in a year, and we can probably expect that next year, 2021, will be fairly similar. There has been, because of we looked at this last time, the Russell-McFerran effect, and that's something that happens around the equinoxes. And we've just had, on the 22nd of September, the beginning of autumn, the equinox there. And this is a good time to look at auroras, because it just so happens that the alignment of the Earth's magnetic field with the solar wind means that solar wind can get sucked in to the Earth's poles with resulting aurora. And here's one from Kristin Berg of Norway. She's up in Tromsø, and takes some fantastic photos of the aurora up there, and this is one of them. This was actually on the 28th of September, so it's all working very well for there. Not much down our latitudes yet. That will come in due course with increasing solar activity, but certainly the north of Ireland can quite easily see good auroras, and sometimes it goes further down into the south as well. But we've probably got 3 or 4 years to wait for the best of that. So that's the aurora. Now then, this is a fantastic time of year to be looking at the planets, and we'll look at these in detail shortly, but here's the basics. Jupiter is bright in the south to southwest at 8 p.m. in the evening throughout October. It is well dark even before the clocks change by 8 p.m. now. And Saturn is just quite close to it. Saturn and Jupiter are getting closer together gradually before that 23rd of December very close conjunction indeed, and that's well worth looking out for. Mars comes up next, rises in the east about 8 p.m, and then by 2 o'clock in the morning it's very high up in the south, much more so than Jupiter and Saturn, which are actually quite low down this time. Venus rises about 4. It is still the third brightest object in the sky after the Sun and the Moon, but actually Mars for quite some while is brighter than Jupiter, which is unusual, but it is very close to us this time. It's the best apparition of Mars since 2003, and the best you'll get until 2035. So that is well worth looking out for Mars. In fact, it's unmistakable if you see it. You can see the other planets too, with one exception. You can't see Mercury this time round. You almost can, because it is 25 degrees from the Sun, which is about as far as it gets. But unfortunately, the angle of the ecliptic this time of year is such that it's very, very low on the horizon after sunset, and I doubt very much that you'll see it unless you are far south and have a very, very good southwest horizon. That's where you would see Mercury, but it's difficult. The other planets, the only problem is they're a bit dim, and Uranus will appear as a green ball in a small telescope, or you can see it with binoculars as well. You probably need to have a star chart with you to work out exactly where it is. But it is in Aries, visible most of the night because it's close to opposition. 31st of October is Uranus opposition. You can also see Neptune in Aquarius, magnitude 7.8, so you really do need a scope of some sort for that, but it will appear as a nice little blue dot. Now, some of the guys down in Limerick, Frank and Dave, have actually observed Pluto. Now that really is serious observing. They used a 20-inch Dobsonian from a very dark site and found, using star charts of course, the magnitude 14.3 object in Sagittarius. So that is a real achievement. Well done, guys. Okay, so we'll start our tour of the planets. Now we've got the planetarium here set up for the 15th of October, the middle of the month, 8 o'clock in the evening. You can start observing nice and early now because as the nights get longer and the days get shorter, not everybody's happy about that, but us astronomers, we should be, because we get more observing time there. We're going to start off with Jupiter here. Now Jupiter is in the south, quite low, only about 10 degrees above the horizon, so it's you're looking through quite a lot of air, unfortunately, but that's the way the angle of the ecliptic is for us at the moment. And we can zoom in on Jupiter here. Let's have a closer look at that, and the first thing we see is the 4 Galilean moons. There's actually just 3 of them on show at that moment in time there. And we've just got a great red spot coming round over the horizon here. So if we perhaps put this forward an hour, that's it, we'll get a much better view at 9 in the evening there of the great red spot. That is of course a weather storm that's been raging for at least 300 years and will probably go another 300 more. I think we only really know that because we've only been watching it for the last 300 years, but that is Jupiter. So moving on now, just a few degrees to the east and slightly higher up, we have Saturn. Now let's go and have a look at Saturn here. Here's Saturn, and we'll zoom in on Saturn again, quite low in the sky. Not the best presentation of the planets this year, but we'll have a look in. There is Saturn, and we can see here quite clearly Saturn has lots of moons. We can see a few of them. The most obvious obviously here would be Titan. Titan is magnitude 8.7 there, so not quite as bright as Neptune, a little bit below Neptune we'd be saying in the relative scheme of things. Should be able to see that in a small telescope, and it's got a good separation from Saturn. Looking closer into Saturn itself, Saturn is now well past opposition, as we can tell by the amount of shadow on the rings here. That means that the Sun is not this direction towards us, but actually well off to one side. And that indicates that Saturn has gone well past its opposition, which was in July, and so that is the planet Saturn. Now looking right over to the eastern horizon, we can see Mars rising. This is still 8 o'clock in the evening on the 15th of October, and let's have a closer look at Mars. The important thing to remember about Mars here also is the magnitude. Look, minus 2.59. This is just a couple of days after opposition. The closest approach of Mars actually is not at opposition quite, but because of the elliptical nature of the Mars orbit, and Earth's indeed, it's October the 6th. It's at its very closest and therefore brightest, but opposition on the 15th on the 13th, and we're looking here at the 15th. So this is 8 o'clock in the evening. Let's have a zoom in on Mars. There we go, and that looks quite remarkable. The other thing now, again, in the world of serious observing, if you can get the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, that's fear and dread, then you can tick off a very exclusive box. Not many people have observed the moons of Mars, and this is obviously the time to do it when it's as close as it can get. So there's looking at Mars. And here's a very nice photograph taken from Northern Ireland by IAA member Ralph Smith, and that was taken on the 17th of September, late in the evening, just before 11 o'clock. And that's Mars with the North Polar Cap there, looking fantastic. Sorry, South Polar Cap. He's put the directions on here. That's the South Polar Cap in the top of the picture there. And that's a lovely picture of Mars taken from Northern Ireland. That's really, really good. Okay, now moving the clock back to the 3rd of October and 5 o'clock in the morning, looking to the east. Venus is coming up. Well, I've picked that date very specifically because there is a very close conjunction in the morning between Venus and first magnitude star Regulus. They are, in fact, let's have a look at the distance between them here. They are, in fact, not even 1 moon diameter apart. The moon is 32 arc minutes. This is not even that. This is about half of moon width. 15-16 arc minutes of separation between Venus and Regulus. That's Saturday morning, the 3rd of October, 5 o'clock in the morning, in the east. You'll need a nice east horizon to see that one. It will, of course, rise, but then you'll get into the dawn, the oncoming dawn there. So let's have a look at that. Now Venus at that point has a magnitude of minus 4.09, minus 4, call that. But of course you are looking through nearly 5 atmospheres at that point, so reduced down to minus 3.47. But that is the close conjunction of Regulus and Venus. Venus, of course, is very much brighter than Regulus, but Regulus is a first magnitude star, so that should be very good. Now then, let's have a look for the other planets. I said we're not going to see Mercury, I'm afraid, in October, but we can see the other planets here. Now, let's first of all find Mars again, and I've set the clock just to make this easier for 10 o'clock in the evening, because that's a good time to do it, in the middle of the month, 15th of October. And now we're at Mars here. And if we sort of look to the left of Mars, there's not a lot in this part of the sky, but there are the 2 bright stars of Aries, Hamal and Sheraton, sort of up and to the left of Mars, and down from there, same level in the sky as Mars is Uranus. Let's just do a distance check on that. It's 18 degrees. Sorry, the writing's just gone over something else there. So sort of, if you hold your fist out at arm's length, it's a little bit more than that, the gap there, but we can find here then Uranus. So let's go and do that. Here is Uranus. There we go. And let's zoom in on Uranus. And we will see, that's what you probably will see, something like that, a greenish blob in a small telescope, 80mm refractor, something like that, or a Newtonian, small Newtonian. If you do have a more powerful instrument, you can probably see some detail. So there we are, close in on Uranus, and you'll struggle very hard to see its moons, I'm afraid, and you certainly won't see its ring system. They are very, very difficult observations requiring professional telescopes, but you can get the moons on an overexposed webcam image with something like an 11 or 14 inch telescope, but you do need a lot of light gathering power to see those. Now then, in the area of sky roughly between Saturn and Jupiter and Mars, there's not a lot going on in this part of the sky, but there is the constellation Aquarius, which is always a bit indistinct, and in Aquarius at this time is Neptune. So let's go and have a look at Neptune. Now we see straight away that compared to the few stars around it, Neptune is very, very dim, down at magnitude 7.83 there. And what I usually do here is I find these three stars, this little triangle of stars here at the bottom end of Aquarius, and Delta Aquarii is the one closest to Neptune, just here, and we can find Neptune, center it up and have a little zoom in on that, and again it looks like a nice blue ball. I've always liked the colour contrast you get between Uranus and Neptune. I've always found Uranus distinctly green and Neptune distinctly blue. Other people have slightly different views. They see Uranus as blue as well. It's just a person to person different thing here. So we look closely in at Neptune, and we can even see on here Triton. Now that's a very difficult observation. If you can see Triton, you're doing well, because it's magnitude 13.5, which is pretty much in the same ballpark as Pluto that we'll look at in a minute. So there we are, that's Neptune, always nice to see. Now here we go, this is observation of the century. Now what I've done here, I've pulled the date back to the 7th of October, 8 o'clock in the evening. That's the sort of time you need to be looking for this, just as it gets dark. We're looking south again at the two planets Jupiter and Saturn, and in the area right in between them, we look closely enough, magnitude 14.3. We can zoom in here on Pluto. Let me just center that up and zoom in, and here it is, Pluto. Now I don't think that you will actually see the 5 moons of Pluto. You probably won't even see Charon, but you will be able to see Pluto as a tiny dot in a huge telescope. Now the guys who did this, Frank and Dave down at Limerick Astronomy Club, they used a 20-inch Dobsonian from a very dark site in the Burren, I think, and they managed to find Pluto using a star chart and so on. And that's what you have to do this kind of observing. This is high level, serious observing, and well done to those guys for doing that. So that's Pluto. So now many people will tell you that there is only one, oh no, there's at least 2 very worthwhile meteor showers, the Perseids in August. The Geminids are probably the best in December, but I have to say I prefer the Perseids, because if you're going to lie down on a couch, which is the recommended way of viewing, then I'd rather be doing that in August than December. But there is another one, and it's very good this year actually, the Orionids, peaking on the 20th to 21st of October overnight. There is no moon in the sky. That's going to make seeing the meteors that much easier. The radiant is that's where not where you really look, but you look around the radiant rather than at it. The radiant is above left of Orion, so just up past Betelgeuse is where the meteors will appear to come from, but they will in fact be spread throughout Gemini and Orion here, and Taurus up here, and probably up into Auriga up above there as well, and you should see quite a few. It's actually an artifact of Halley's Comet, and one of the features about Orionids, they are very fast meteors. They're coming in at about 140,000 miles per hour or so, and they hit the atmosphere very hard and go off with a bright flash very, very quickly, even more so than most meteors. Time to start looking, 11 o'clock at night, 2300 on the 20th, and you'll see that the altitude there is very low, but actually it rises up, and by 6 a.m. it's very, very high up in the sky. So that's really the time to be looking, starting around midnight perhaps, and going through to 6 o'clock in the morning if you have nothing important to do the following day. So that's the Orion meteor shower. We look forward to that one. Now just a little bit on the deep sky, and while we're in that part of the sky where the Orionid radiant is, just a little further up from there is the constellation Auriga, and below it's the constellation Gemini. And there's some very nice clusters here actually that we'll have a look at, open clusters, all of them, starting with Messier 35 here in Gemini. So let's have a look at that. It's magnitude 5, so it's just about naked eye. You probably can see it naked eye, but it's not that bright, but it's a nice looking cluster, and actually you get an NGC next to it as well there. That is NGC 2140 something or other, I think. But here is Messier 35, That looks good. Then we'll go back out and we'll find the other 3 up in Auriga that go along with it. Messier 37. They're not quite in order, but here is Messier 37. The magnitude 5.6. Again, you might capture it with the naked eye. It'll be fairly obvious in binoculars. It shows up on photographs nicely too as well. So that's Messier 37 just there. And then we've got Messier 36 up here. That's again magnitude 6, not quite as bright, but looks equally good. And that's again a nice open cluster to look at. And we'll come further out and look up to Messier 38. That's here. And looking in there, magnitude 6.4, Messier 38. So that's 4 nice open clusters in that area. There's a lot else going on in that area too, which we can see here with some star forming regions and so on, which is worthy of a talk all of its own, because this area of the Milky Way is not the brightest part of the Milky Way by a long chalk, but there's a lot of interesting objects in it. Now then, in the words of Lieutenant Colombo, just one more thing. The moon is full on the 1st of October. The moon is also full on the early hours of the 31st of October. Now, when this happens, this is one of the definitions of what is called a blue moon, the second full moon in a month, because the moon, the time between full moons is 29.5 days, so you can fit 2 of those occasionally into a 31-day month. And this is one such occasion. Now then, it's called a blue moon. It's nonsense, really. There's nothing blue about it. It's exactly the same as any other full moon. In fact, in this case, quite small, because it is a what they call a micro moon, but that's a bit of a misnomer as well, because it's just a little bit smaller than a supermoon. Because that's the Earth, the moon having an elliptical orbit is sometimes a bit further away from the Earth, and this is one such occasion. So they are a blue moon. So there you are, that's all I have to say for October, apart from stay safe, keep looking up, and thanks for watching.